Alright guys, so today I want to listen to this video. I'm going to listen to a small snippet of it. But this is Brian Sutterer of Maryland. He is a sports doctor and he is going to explain what he thinks happened to Joe Burrow. Obviously at the end of the day, we don't 1000% know, but he is a doctor, so we're going to get a general gist of what could possibly have happened. And kind of go on from there. And again, like I said, that's really the best we can do. So shout out to him right here. Brian Stutter, Maryland. Are you a sports fan? Ever wonder what's going on? Let's discuss the injuries. So he does talk about injuries of all different kinds, of all different players, and pretty much their timetable of healing, when they're going to get back, when they're going to get healthy, all that kind of good stuff. So again, shout out to him. He is actually a doctor, so I guess this is like the best actual take we're going to get from an actual doctor. So he explains it in a weird way. Let's go ahead and listen up.
Deal with. So then to wrap up this whole evolution, we see Burrow come back out for the second half with no immobilization, no brace, no ice, nothing on that right wrist or finger. Things don't look particularly swollen. Finger position looks pretty darn normal. So this is all a little bit bizarre, to be completely honest. What made me think first off about potential ulnar nerve injury is that ulnar nerve runs along the inside of your elbow. And whenever you're a thrower, sometimes that ulnar nerve can sublux or snap across a bone called the medial epicondyle and cause a lot of paresthesias down into your hand, specifically your fifth and fourth finger. That's what happens whenever you hit your funny bone. And the way he kind of shook out his hand, was opening and closing, makes me think about an injury to that ulnar nerve.
Now, I will say, just for context here, he does talk about how early in this play, when Joe ends up throwing the ball, right, and he ends up getting hurt on that play, you could see his pinky and this finger go like this. Like it's extended out toward the bottom. Almost to a point where his pinky looks like it's like bent backwards. Like it's actually kind of gruesome to look at, because his pinky looks like it's almost bent backwards like this. And a lot of the reason why, as he says right here, is because of that nerve. That nerve is causing the pinky to go like that. So when you hit that nerve, when you strike that nerve, that's when those things are happening. So basically what he's analyzing is, he doesn't think 1000% it's a wrist injury. And the reason why he says this is exactly what he mentioned right there, was at the end of the day, he didn't come out with a brace on his hand. He didn't come out with a brace on his arm. He didn't come out with a brace on his wrist. He didn't come out with his fingers taped. These are all things that would happen if he did immediately have that injury. And to the point of a fractured wrist, that when he went into the locker room, he took x-rays. And the fact that he took x-rays and he's not coming out with a brace or something to protect his arm clearly indicates that, yeah, he's probably does not have a fracture, does not have a crack, does not have a break, and the x-rays came back negative, which in a positive way, that's good. But again, now, as a doctor explaining here, this is more now about, okay, if it's not a x-rays are bad, then what's wrong? As he's saying, it might be a nerve thing.
Now, the ulnar nerve can get injured. It can snap up at the elbow. Maybe Burrow was dealing with that. Maybe that's why he's wearing an elbow pad. The ulnar nerve also goes down through the wrist. It specifically goes through a part of the wrist called Guillen's canal. And if you have anything like a fracture in, for example, the hamate bone or any of these bones on the volar side of the wrist, you can irritate that ulnar nerve as it's passing through Guillen's canal and still cause some of that weakness and paresthesias in that distal upper extremity. So I wonder about the possibility of that in terms of why they're calling this a wrist injury, but it almost presents more of like that hand numbness, tingling sort of a thing. We have to be detectives here.
So let's also go back to another point he made, because I forgot to put this part in here. So he does mention this on the sideline that Joe actually, and I didn't notice this myself, but so shout out to him for this. Joe had an elbow pad underneath of his right elbow, and he went into this game with that elbow pad underneath his right elbow. Now, here's the thing. He's never had that before in an NFL game. This is the first game he's had an elbow pad underneath his elbow. Then you look back on Tuesday when he comes off the plane and the guy has a hand brace on. And now he's playing this game with an elbow pad before anything got hurt, before anything was a problem. This is not looking good. And then you see some of these throws he's made in this game and last game. They're just absolutely wild, out of nowhere throws. It's kind of begging the question, like, was there a pre-existing injury going into this game that the Bengals did not tell us about? And if that's the case, how hurt was he going into this game? Was he able to really play this game, or was he did he force himself to play this game? These are all questions that, again, we're going to eventually get the answer to once we get information and really breakdown of his injury and how his injuries, how his injury looks in the end, right? But at the end of the day, these are all questions that, it kind of sucks as fans because we didn't know any of this going into this.
Right? Because presumably at halftime, they've gotten some x-rays of Burrow's wrist. If there was something fractured in his wrist, he'd be immobilized. He'd be in a splint. He'd be ruled out. So presumably, x-rays were negative. However, on x-rays, you can't see tendons. You can't see cartilage. You can't see ligaments. And so presumably having a normal x-ray means an injury to the bones is much less likely. That then makes me think about injuries to the tendons or to the nerves. For example, there's an area on this ulnar side of the wrist called the TFCC, triangular fibrocartilage complex. It's sort of like a meniscus sitting inside that ulnar side of the wrist. And that can be injured specifically with trauma and can cause a lot of that dull ulnar-sided wrist pain. So that could be a potential for what Burrow might be dealing with. However, I'd lean a little bit more towards the tendons, specifically maybe the tendons that extend and straighten out the pinky. Those tendons, specifically the extensor digiti minimi for the pinky, run along the outside of the wrist, up through the backside of the wrist in a little specific groove of the ulna, and then all the way up out to the elbow. So maybe the elbow pad was because of some irritation in those tendons, maybe extending down into the hand. But again, this is certainly bizarre because we'd expect some sort of immobilization on Burrow's wrists if this is still in fact a wrist injury and not an elbow nerve injury like I initially suspected. Even if all Burrow had was a finger dislocation and he was going to be ruled out, you'd expect him to be buddy taped or something done to protect his finger. So there seems to be something else going on here. I don't know if the Bengals are trying to downplay this because of what we saw with Burrow seemingly wearing a splint on his wrist before he showed up to the game, but this is bizarre. Hard for me to say 100% again.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, as he said, it is hard to say for anyone, I feel like, at the end of the day, but it's definitely, if it's a nerve thing, I'm not sure what the recovery is for that or how long that would take. Obviously, as he said, that is correct that, the x-rays most likely came back negative because he would be wearing a splint or something. If the x-rays came back positive, he would be ruled out right away. Joe was not ruled out, by the way, right away. He was not ruled out immediately. Even when he was in the locker room at halftime, he wasn't ruled out at that moment in time. He does eventually get ruled out, but he wasn't at first. So that makes me think that they were like, okay, well, let's take you in the locker room. We don't know, at first they're probably like, we don't know what's going on. Potentially it's a wrist injury. I know Coach said that he thought it was a wrist injury. But going into the locker room, he's probably like, we don't know what's really going on here with you. We're going to figure it out. They take an x-ray. X-rays come back negative. They're like, okay, well, we don't need to put a brace on your hand or anything on your hand. You seem, it literally just something happened maybe with a nerve. And as he said with the elbow, it's very possible it happened with the elbow. You go into this game, you have a elbow brace, which, again, something that I did not even realize and no one talked about, Bengals-wise. Obviously, they're not going to. But you have an elbow brace going into this game. You have a hand brace when you get off the plane. There's clearly something wrong with the tendons. Because, again, he comes back out there. His hand's not swollen. His hand looks a lot better. His hand looks almost perfect. And again, now you have more and more problems going down the line because if this is a tendons issue or an issue with something else than just your wrist and it being broken, obviously, again, the timetable is going to be not the same because a broken wrist or a sprained wrist is 1 to 6 weeks. But when it comes to then tendons, well, this could be a long-term thing, right? Depending on if this is just he needs to rest it, he needs to get better. He does have 12 days to rest, which is great. But then the question is, okay, if it's not a rest thing, did he do permanent damage to his tendons? And if he did permanent damage to his tendons, this could be a lifetime-altering thing. This might not just be a short-term type of thing. This could be a lifetime. So now you have a whole entire list there of, is this going to be a 1, 2, 3 week injury or just a resting thing? Or is this going to be an injury where Joe never throws the ball again? And we saw that in the NFL. Look at Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck, he never threw the ball again after his injury. And there were quarterbacks in the NFL who have done that and never thrown the ball again. So this is kind of now becoming more scary. I don't want to fearmonger this and, oh, what this is doom and gloom. It's not doom and gloom. We're just going based on speculation from a doctor. But again, like I said, he does bring up a lot of good, valid points that, why was he not in the brace? Why was he wearing, an elbow pad in this? Like, what's going on there? Why was he wearing that? And you can see right here, this is the elbow pad, by the way. He's wearing an elbow pad. He never wears an elbow pad on his right arm. He's not wearing it on his left arm, just his right arm, his throwing arm. So then that's a question of why was that the case. He brings up here, obviously this is a clowny sack to play before that. But he brings up here, you see these two fingers? Show this. You see these two fingers? They're going like this. And then this one, the pinky, ends up bending backwards. And it's like, wait, what's going on there? Why is that happening? And as, doctor said here, it's because of his tendons. His tendons were destroyed. And that's causing that to happen with his elbow and the tendons to go all the way down your elbow from your hand and all construct together. I mean, these are literally, it's like a line. It's like a, ironically enough, it's like, a mechanism. It's like a, what can I connect it to? It's a machine, right? You have a vein, you have tendons that go all the way up, all the way down, all the way up, all the way down. If one of these get destroyed or hurt or a problem, you can't do this anymore. So, yeah, it's going to be a long sequence. We're going to probably find out today a little bit more. I'm going to guess we get an MRI done today and we kind of get a little bit more information. But we'll have to wait and see, guys. Tell me down below your thoughts, opinions. I'll see you guys next one. Shout out again to Brian Stutterer, Maryland. I'll leave a link down below in the description to his video and his channel.